Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Welcome to the IHRC Bookshop. Tonight we are hosting Nargis Khan, Zainab Ali, and Arzu Merali, poetress, with their work, collection of their poems in a book called Every Day and Every Land. You can purchase the book in store or online, shop ihrc.org. It's currently on offer for £5. It's usually £6. And I would add another important thing is that all profits from the publication will go to the Islamic Human Rights Commission Trust Nigeria Fund, which supports living, medical, and educational costs of the Islamic movement survivors and families of those martyred at the hands of state violence in Nigeria. I'm your host tonight. My name is Demir Mahmutćehajić. I reside in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Arrived yesterday, but I'm one of the founders of Islamic Human Rights Commission. And when I present myself to people, this is one of the really great honors that I have achieved in my life. It was a long time ago. We can say now 30 years ago. We are a little bit short to 30 years ago. And time flies, but principles survive. Struggle is there. A revolutionary spirit is there. And it is good to recharge batteries. So I came to recharge batteries here from the place where I reside. It's struggle everywhere, as the book says, every day and every land. So wherever we are, our state of mind make us behave like every day is Ashura and every place is Karbala. When I go hold of this book, I didn't have much time to read it. So I was reading it like in bits and pieces, and for some reason, this year I was thinking much more about Hazrat Zainab than anybody else from the Ashura and from the massacre at Karbala. It could be because we experienced something with the shahadat of Imam Khamenei rahmatullah alayh, that suddenly brought to many of us the greatness of the Imam rahmatullah alayh. So we started listening, learning, studying, hearing, all those things that we were not while he was alive. So, to me, it was like, who told us about Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Who taught us about Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Who brought us close to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? And when I say Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I mean all of them. The small, large companions who were there. We talk about the revolution of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but this book, to me, and I'm sorry if I'm making mistake, is teaching me about the revolution of Hazrat Zainab alayhi salam. And I'm grateful that three autresses are so brave to come up with such a direct teaching tool for us who don't know. Each of the poems spoke to me differently, but the whole book, to me, contained so many emotional and important messages. Like the first moment when I got hold of this book, I read Merali Publishing House. I knew late marhum Merali, and he knew my father. This is what I was talking to Arzu before. How do I intend to, I want to transmit emotions to all of us. I want us to, use this opportunity to fill each other with emotions. Late marhum Merali had a special relationship with my father. They did not spend a lot of time together. They did not speak the same language. They did not understand each other, but they loved each other. Yeah. And my dad would always ask me whenever I traveled to UK, have you seen him? Have you passed my salam to him? How's he doing? He's my friend. Say nice things to him. And this saying was going back from UK back to Bosnia. So this was a first great emotion that overwhelmed me even before I started reading poems. A second was the explanation of the cover image. It's like these are all the messages. These are all, this whole book should be read, even that some fonts are small for us who need glasses. But the whole book should be read in every word. Yeah, I'll find it later on. I'm still pretending that I don't need it. So in a cover image, we have the whole lecture. To those who don't know, connecting first of all the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mosque in Medina with Imam Hussein mosque in Cairo, and teaching the importance. So read it. I won't take so much time about it. Then the symbolism of what I read, that the prophets go towards the survivors and the victims of Islamic movement in Nigeria. This is what this group of people, this revolutionary spirit, it's been carrying on for so long. I lived in UK for quite a while, and I faced various kind of racism, not towards me, but I realized that the societies are divided on a number of issues. Who comes from, what is the background, but the revolutionary spirit, the revolutionaries overcome all of this. We recognize the brotherhood and sisterhood all over the world, wherever it is, if it's sincere. So this book, I feel I can speak for hours about it, but I don't want to take so much time. This is a collection of poems of Sister Arzu, Sister Zainab, Sister Narjis. I told them I don't look at it to go in details about your person. Your work here, to me, is more important. We will learn about you individually later on. I have an intention to read each of your poems. That's what I said early on. But before that, I would like to ask each one of you at least one question, and then maybe you can read one of your poems and we can spend the next 10 minutes reading it. Because what I find out is that you have brought to the English-speaking community a different way of presenting the lesson of Ashura, the lesson of standing up for justice, in English language. And I think we need to read it, recite it, encourage others to read it, recite it, and pass it on. So I will go from Sister Zainab first. I read that you are. Yeah, this is what you told us before. Your poems don't have the marking of when they were written, so some of them are quite
Very old.
very old.
I was saying they're older than Sister Narjis. Yeah.
So can you tell us more about it?
Sorry, I shouldn't say more.
Can you tell us how it started? How long has it been going on? How important is it to you to express your feeling in poetry like this? Because you are a university lecturer in mathematics and science.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, so this is, tell us more about it.
About my poetry. I think originally I was about 8 years old, and my mum used to ask us to write articles, and I started an article, and I thought, hey, hang on, that rhymed. I was only 8. I thought, okay, and I said to my mum, I've got a good idea, Mimi. I've got a really good idea. And she said it must be some shortcut about my article. Those of you who know my mum will smile. So I said, okay. And then she realized that she perhaps should have been more encouraging and said, no, go ahead with your idea and try it out. And so I wrote it, and it turned into a poem, and she was really pleased, and that's how it started. So that was my original. And then I think the Kerbalov poems started when I entered my early teens. So the Kerbalov poems started then. And I suppose there are times when I write, and then times when I don't write. I just stop. And it's more a case of, I suppose in a way it's like breathing. When you want to write, it's like you need to write. It's not just you want to write, you need to write, and then you can't write for some reason. That is what it is for me, but I don't know. My sisters here, it might be different. You mentioned something else. So essentially that's my little story in a nutshell.
So I have met Nargis, or is Nargis pronounced Nargis, this afternoon, but I feel like I know you for a very long time. Very quickly we find out that I know your husband, I know your husband-in-law, and that we've been, so this is a circle of people and everything. And it is your poems, like all the poems here, deeply touched me, and you are of younger generations. Let's you are. Yeah. So tell us, how do you is there any specific way why you were motivated to, are you trying to reach somebody? Because I can see a lot of opportunities for your poetry. For me, these are very important educational tools. It's just how are you aware of it? What motivated you?
It's really nice to be considered young, first of all. I have 3 children, mashallah, so I don't feel young. So what motivated me? Well, we all have a role to play in resistance, I think. And a lot of us have struggled to think, what is our role? What do we do? And in thinking about that, I looked at Lady Zainab, who you mentioned earlier. And what did she do? How did she resist? So firstly, she was there to bear witness to the atrocities, to the calamities. And then she used her voice. She used her words specifically. She spoke truth to power. And if you look at the her speeches, her sermons, they're poetry, basically. So keeping that tradition alive, I actually started writing poetry that wasn't about Muharram or about our religious personalities. It was about the racism and the structural racism, the injustices that exist and that we have been exposed to, our generation has been exposed to. So I started there, and from there it sort of kept going, writing about motherhood, and then writing about, I think my first poem that was about Muharram was on Ashura a few years ago. So really it's a way of trying to resist. It's a form of resistance, but also, as you mentioned, poetry is a tool. It is there. And Sister Zainab, you mentioned it's like sometimes you need to breathe again. And Fanon says, you know, we revolt. Why do we revolt? Because we can't breathe. So it just gets to that point where you need the release. You need to let it out. So I think that poetry is a tool for the release, but also for connecting with our community to show them that the emotions you're feeling, what you're going through, you're not alone. Here is somebody else who can maybe give words to the experience that you have.
It was not deliberate that you are seated this way. I mean, like, but I know Arzu so long.
Not so young.
Not so young.
Don't try to portray.
And out of so many things that she's done since we know each other, and we've been doing it together, and with this, you know, I was a bit surprised, to be honest, when I started reading her poetry, you know, and I thought to myself, like, why have you been hiding this for so long? You know, I mean, it's like we need more of this, you know, and we need more of this, especially from the Hazrat Zainab's perspective, position. You know, it's like I know you as a revolutionary from my young ages. You know, you were an example. You know, but you were exemplar to me. You were somebody who was a part of the group that I was like looking up to, and you know, and I tried to obey and listen. I don't know how good all that was, you know, and the way I saw you, and it's one of the ways I presented you to other people, is like you are, to me, an example of Islamic feminist, you know, very clear, no, without any misguidance or anything like that. So your poetry, as well as your poetry, is exactly what we need. We need sisters to come out, speak up, to break down this falsehood about the Islamic woman being incapable, oppressed, changed, you know, uneducated. You know, so when I got hold of all this, it was like, wow, Arzu, you know, it's like, and you know that I organized my trip over here to be. So it means a lot to me, and thank you very much. You said it in that you were encouraged by your family to publish it, to put it like this, but also you told me that this has been going on for 10 years or something. So let's not look back at how long it took to get this book, can you tell us when is it going to be next one? You know, because
So, Bismillah. First of all, he said a lot of things about me which I think are very exaggerated, but
I'm not so sure.
I'll pay you later. Not you, though. Okay. First of all, so thank you for your. Okay, where do I start? Thank you, my sisters, because this book wouldn't exist without your poetry. And thank you for your kind words about my dad. I don't think there's enough words to describe what kind of impact he's had with people not realizing that he was there. And the last things that you were saying about having sisters and being out there and speaking up and writing poetry, this was Dad. This was what Dad was all about. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really think I had a poetic bone in my body. It wasn't something I was particularly interested in when I was young. I tried because I did an English literature degree, but if I'm honest, I kind of forced myself to read poetry rather than enjoy it. There's some funny stories. I'm just trying to think which is the right one to say, but I think the first one that I wrote was around 2007, 2008, and it's the one called Abbas. And the history of that is very long because I went for Hajj a few times in my teens, and I had relatives over there, so we didn't go through the packages. And I was on a trip between Mecca to Medina with my mom and my uncle and some cousins and things, and we had what I can only describe as an insane driver who had no fear of anything and drove in this completely erratic and dangerous way. And this is at a time where the roads were terrible. It's not like we have now trains and wonderful roads and all this kind of thing. I mean, you could just break down somewhere and nobody would find you type of thing. And I was just praying, and then I did this kind of near that if I'm saved, I will write an English thing, which was something that Dad was very much about. We need musiba in English, about Hazrat Abbas. And then I had writer's block for about 20 years. And so I don't know what prompted me particularly at that time to write. Funny enough, I remember your father-in-law sent a picture from Karbala of somebody sitting on the edge of Furat, just weeping. And for a long time on my Facebook, that was illustrating this poem. But yeah, that was the start of it. And then it was slow. It was kind of a drip. And we got to the end of 2008, and I think it was Boxing Day, but it was coincidentally the 1st of Muharram that the Zionists started what was called Operation Cast Lead, which at that time we called a genocide, and it was a genocide. It was certainly genocidal acts. Is that what GMD exactly? It was the first year anniversary of that because it went from end of 2008 into January 2009. I think it was around about the 7th of Muharram where I just was at a kind of thing where I don't know. Every day the news, I mean now that news would probably not be shocking, but at the time it was so intense, so distressing what we were seeing, the news we were getting, and I just was paralyzed. And somehow I thought I have to write something that makes a connection between Karbala and Palestine. And at the same time, I remember Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah Shaheed was speaking every night in Lebanon saying, you don't need to go to a majlis, just turn on your television set, look what's happening in Gaza. And so that kind of was the first time where I think I actually put the connection very directly with Palestine. And I think since then, pretty much all the poetry that I've done centers or is only about or connecting with that. So I don't know if there's more in me, but there are definitely more poetry books coming out from our Merali publishing house. And we already have a call out for poems on Palestine. So if there are any poets, however they want to talk about it, doesn't have to be through the lens of Karbala, doesn't have to be through a religious lens. We're looking for your poetry because that's such a powerful medium, actually. And we need to use it. And why don't we use it? We have a lot of talent. I think we don't have a lot of confidence. Bismillah. Bismillah. Incidentally, you're partly to blame as well for all of this. Yes, because a long time ago, those 29 years ago, you put a poem up on the wall on our pin board in our first office, and it was Makdijda. And although it was from the 60s, but it was, excuse me, very much describing what was happening, that had happened in Bosnia. And I use it till this day. I quote it everywhere. So you made the connection first. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Yes. I'll start reading poem first, and then I would ask you to read one of each of your poems. And if you feel like, if you read a poem from your collection that, I marked, I won't read it. So if you don't, I will read it. And then we will let the audience ask some questions and everything. Huh? Yes. Is that okay? Yeah. So excuse my pronunciation or whatever. English is my second language. So thank you. The Rising. I am Hussein, and I have risen. So too Qasim, Abbas, and Hur, and Zainab, dear Zainab, bear witness to our deaths again, in preference to life with humiliation. And amongst her tears and those of whom we leave behind is the consolation that bears witness eternally, that they that hate and mutilate and hurt us, murder us and trample upon us dead, fail, here and hereafter, for we die with dignity. And our torch, our fire, our call for justice, and the struggle to ensure its final victory burns, never to be extinguished, neither in Karbala or Philistine. I am Hussein, and I have risen in Gaza. Is there anyone here to help me? This was written on 3rd of January 2009, 7 Muharram 1430, during the Operation Cast Lion. This was Arzu's one of the poems. So.
Hussein's Warrior. Silence hovers in the humid air. The captives are watched with a horrified stare. Some fearful eyes watch Ibn Ziyad alone, seated calmly upon his throne, shrewd and shameless, beginning to sup, the wine sloshing coolly inside his cup. Languidly sitting upon his seat, Hussein's head before his feet. In his bloodied glory he coolly basks. Who are these slaves? He casually asks. These shabby women who before me stand are surely not of the Prophet's clan. He sees one lowered head slowly rise. He meets Ali in her fiery eyes. Her voice his authority dares defy. The granddaughter of the Prophet am I. Play not with us this insulting game. I'm the daughter of Ali. Zainab is my name. Today you gloat. You think you have won. Believe me, the battle is not yet done. Victory is not yours. Do not forget. You wanted Hussein's oath, which you did not get. Before the tyrant, he refused to kneel. Your dirty ways he declined to conceal. No women, no wealth did he desire, no corrupted crown did he admire. No bloodshed, no battle did he commence. Men were slaughtered in his defense. He declined to uphold your tyrannical throne. For Islam's life, he gave his own. One by one, I saw men die. I saw strewn and bloodied corpses lie. I watched children burn in tents aflame, chadars snatched without any shame, women screaming amidst the flames. She pauses a moment, checking her tears, ensuring no sign of her grief appears. You bring us now before your seat, thinking your victory is all complete. Upon your bloodied crown do not depend. Watch how the wrath of God will descend. See how his anger will consume you whole. Guilt will plague your stricken soul. She is trembling softly like a leaf as she tries to control her rage and grief. She tries to ignore the shattering pain, her bleeding hands, the ruthless chain. Abbas, Akbar, Qasim, and Hussein. Yet, despite shattered heart and bleeding wrists, despite bruised and battered parched lips, despite aged eyes that long to moan, she will overturn a tyrant's throne.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Ark of Salvation. They don't understand why we beat our chests, why we weep uncontrollably, why we're so obsessed with you and your family, you and your tragedy. Little do they know that this so-called obsession is none other than our greatest possession. But anyone who loves you knows this pain. To anyone who loves you, you don't have to explain that a flame was ignited by your death, a flame that burns inside us with every breath. You took a stand against tyranny and oppression, political, spiritual, and social repression. Your philosophy was based on justice and freedom. You didn't ask for power, just to live free from a life of humiliation under a heartless brute, whose greed and manipulation is most surely the root of the evil today committed in Islam's name, the evil whose perpetrators have no shame. When I hear of the way they butchered your baby, how they called themselves Muslims, it's simply crazy. Today we are witnessing the same depravity. Your lovers are killed with renewed brutality. From Kaduna to Karachi to Kabul and further, just as in Karbala, they carry out murder. You were killed, but in your death we came alive. Because of you, we can tell the truth from the lies. Because of you, our hearts are soft but still strong. Because of you, we know what's right from what's wrong. Your mission was to revive your grandfather's religion, return the Muslims to Islam, to true submission. When I mourn for you, my soul shakes. I feel the weight of this grief as my heart breaks. It's as though all of my life's hopes and fears are pinned to you, and now these tears fall down my cheeks as I hear your story. I'm inconsolable, in awe of your glory. How should I describe the perfect creation? It is you, Ya Hussein, the Ark of Salvation.
This poem is 10 years old.
It is. I was just going to say, I wrote this on the 12th of October, 2016, which was the day of Ashura, and it was the first poem that I wrote about Imam Hussein. And it was the time when Daesh's evil was at its peak. So it's just, the same message applies today, though, even though maybe the locations mentioned might be different. But, the Husseini message is eternal.
I need to borrow a book then. Thank you. Thanks.
This is the one time we put pressure on. Yeah.
Bismillah. Qasim of the Intifada. I am crushed under the hooves of an Israeli tank, shot from afar for throwing a stone. I'm every child riddled with bullets, slain going to school. I am dust under a bunker buster. My shadow lies where the bombs fell. I lay in blood at the side of a checkpoint, my father crying, alone. Tonight they came again, burned me in my tent, a flame I cannot rise. My name is recorded everywhere in tears. Each year you cry. Today my name is Mahmoud Abu Samra, and I am Malik Shath. I am Faris Ode. I am Iman Hams, Onan Asghar, and Muhammad Al-Darra. I am Qasim of the Intifada. Remember me and learn my names. Cry tears of sorrow and rejoice, for I died in Karbala today. And that was originally written in 2011, which was, again, when there was another onslaught, I think. I remember there were two young boys, Mahmoud and I can't even remember the second boy's name, Malik, sorry, who were about 10 years old, assassinated. And I revised this last year because, well, I don't need to explain why. It's still, unfortunately, too relevant.
Thank you, sisters. I will now ask brothers and sisters if you have any questions. Would you like to get involved in this session?
Probably. So one of the things is that this connection that you are making very clearly between Karbala and Palestine or any other oppressive space that exists wherever, whether it's under, as you said, the locations change, but the idea, the concept of resistance and the oppression and the brutality and so on doesn't change. What do you think stops that understanding being understood by people around? Because these kind of things where you would not hear within the some of the majalis that would happen during the Muharram kind of period and whatever, that doesn't come across. I'm not sure if that's a fair question, but I think it's a question that always makes me wonder, what are people actually crying about if you can't see the tears of today? Perhaps each person from their own perception, isn't it?
I feel rather conscious because my brother asked the question, so I'll tell him.
We should get him
We
to
should
answer.
get him to
Yeah.
answer it.
You
I'll
can
answer
have
in
some
a second.
ideas.
I'll answer somebody else's, but
No? Okay. You can throw in your ring in the hat. I'm saying this not as an excuse, because I do find it inexcusable the older I get, that this message is not understood at the level of the people who are organizing the majalis, because you can't blame the attendees, because they are internalizing whatever they have been told and they have come to be guided. So I don't blame them if they've internalized a message that isn't what we feel is really the right connection. And I think it's a combination of imperialism and colonialism that has, seeped into every facet of a wide variety of cultures and religious thinking and so on and so forth. And we can unpack that another time, but it's there, and it's there as a deliberate policy. And it's not a secret, it's not a conspiracy. There are enough books written about this now, so we should be able to join up the dots. And in the current moment, and specifically for about, I guess, the last 50 years, we've had really concerted efforts to socially engineer this narrative. And, as much as there's kind of, prevent Wallah thinking in one direction, it's also in this direction as well, to kind of keep people down and to kind of turn this into a commemoration or something almost in a similar, historical, or even in a similar way that's been done to Easter and the Easter message, which is to just make it a kind of cultural, very personal, if you're going to be spiritual about it, reflection. And so I think we have this issue of proper interference that has manipulated our communities. And I'm usually pessimistic, but these days, despite everything that's happened, and maybe because of what's happened recently, I feel like the world is a completely different place now. And people have started to wake up. They're starting to join the dots. They're seeing Islam for what it is. They're seeing these core messages of justice, and they're seeing who stood up for justice, and then they are making the connections now. I think the institutions have got to catch up. I think they've been bypassed, and inshallah, I'm very hopeful for the future now.
Even in Majalis, I will quote Hazrat Ali's, what he said. He was addressing the people, and he said, I can see your bodies here, but your mind is not with me. In quite a few khutbahs, he mentioned that. Even in Majalis, you can see yourself, whether it's in English or Urdu. How many people really listen what the message is? At the same time, I will blame the people who are addressing that particular majlis, because, I don't want to go into too much details. So this kind of thing, you can arrange, make a majlis for this particular thing. So people will really listen what is the message in poetry. Thank you.
Well, I would thank you very much. Bismillah. I would like to, as Arzu said, I should say something about this. There are a number of thoughts that I have for a very long time, which I would not try to answer, but try to raise the questions from my positions. I was very young when I got in touch with Masood, 18-year-old. I come from Sunni Hanafi background, knew how to read Quran and pray and all these sort of things. Went to Maktab, but I wasn't feeling it. Honestly, what moved me towards feeling it was revolutionary spirit. And it was combined with action. Masood and a number of other people. Dr. Kaleem Siddiqui, rahmatullahi, a number of people at that time. They were doing stuff. They were moving stuff. They were, they were leading by example. They were inspiring. So many years later, I still burn with that revolutionary spirit, and I believe that Islam is constant revolution. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the greatest revolutionary of all time. He completely changed, of course, with the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the rahmah and all, but it was done through him, completely changed the society, the worst society that ever existed. And when did we fall back onto it? I think the point when we stopped being revolutionaries to the point where we started preserving what we have. So when we started preserving our achievements, our conquests, our wealth, our positions, our system, our government, our inheritance, we stopped being revolutionaries. When we stop being revolutionaries, things go back. things fall down, because we're constantly in a need of changing ourselves, changing societies, changing things. And this is a difference between us being Muslims and members of other religions. People in other religions also pray, they worship in their own way, but it's only us who have very clear duty to strive to change things around ourselves for better. When we stop doing that, we get lectures, majalis, teachers, ulama that are not inspiring anymore because they are not changing, they are preserving. So we need to look for those who are creating a changing environment, striving environment, revolutionary environment, and move away those who are preserving. Simple as that. It's a waste of time. We need to sort of change the places where we go, who we listen, who we spend time with. If we see that this is not having that energy, I want to change things. I want to clean the road, if nothing else. I want to, make an example in the community if I can't do anything. But there is always, in every place, every day, in every land, something revolutionary that I can do. So they are preserving. They're not changing. This is my opinion.
I totally agree because this is the big problem. Because this is actually the most of the time I think about that, because simply just doing in a cycle like a kolu. So we should stand up and start our own gathering. So that's the way move forward, in my opinion. Thank you.
Anybody else? I wanted to ask, yeah.
Just to the point just made, in every a movement or revolution throughout history, it's always been through art that the spirit of movement and dynamism of love has always been preserved. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And art is, and good poetry, like the great poetry you've read, is designed to be a place that breaks your heart, such that the light can go in. To that point, every artist who goes through that flow state, that egoless state where they seem like they're channeling something from somewhere else, realizes they're influenced by a number of other artists that have always come before them. And so the question is, it'd be very interesting because, of course, the themes that you're writing about, is very evident who the influences are in terms of the subject matter. But in terms of how you've written it, it's quite a new thing to read these things in English. So I wondered whether you had any sort of conscious idea of what other poets or writers might have been your influences as you've been writing, whether they might have been Nohas in Urdu or they might have been other English poets. It'd be very interesting to see what your feelings or thoughts, if any, are about those other influences.
It's not Reza now.
my
It's not
brother
my.
now.
Oh, is it your
Yeah,
brother?
yeah,
Okay.
that's my brother.
Okay. All right. So
So you have to go
I'll
back.
skip to Arzu then after this. Ali, hold on. Do you know? I think the Urdu majalis. I think Urdu basically, we attended Urdu majalis as children, and Urdu is a very poetic language, and I think it's one of the reasons why it draws on from Arabic, the best of Farsi, and the best of Turkish, I think, and then it creates this uniquely poetic language. And so I think that was probably at the back of my mind somewhere. I hesitate to mention the greats, but some of you be familiar with Urdu poetry, Abaya Hubaba. And I remember somebody asking me, that particular poem was over, my goodness, 40 years old. It's 40. There's a poem in, that's why I didn't put dates in here. So, I wrote that a long, long time ago. So, and it's about when Janab Zainab, she's on her own and she's defending the camp. Everybody, the men in the household have been slaughtered, and she's standing outside with a broken sword held in her hand. And she sees her father. She sees this image of her father galloping towards her. And she cries out, and basically, and somebody then, I wrote it in English, I hadn't realized, and somebody asked me afterwards, were you inspired by Abai Hubaba? Oh, my father, now you've come. And at the time I said, no, I don't think so. But then I thought, no, it must have influenced me, because I went through the poem and I thought, no, this is all that I wrote was all that I heard in Urdu, almost, not obviously to a T, but it was the idea of her being alone. So I think the Urdu majalis certainly, I think they were quite an inspiration. I don't know if that answers your question, if I left something out.
That
Sure.
particular poet was Izzat Lakhnawi.
Izzat Lakhnawi.
I mean, this is somebody else's poem. The one you are influenced, Abai Baba. This is the because he not only he was beautiful face and poetry and all that. So this was the first Abai Baba, and nobody possibly. This particular poem is by a Hindu poet. So I can't remember the name of that one. So this is the only, but he read it. The way he did it, you can't stop crying. Abai Baba. You might have heard it, no? Try, honestly. After all these atrocities on Ashura Day, then he read this. It's so touching. It's unbelievable. Thank you.
So I think that the influences started off being subconscious, and then I became conscious of them afterwards. We grew up listening to rap. I didn't really like rap. I didn't really connect with it until I became an adult and I became angry. And then I realized that what rap was about, initially, at least historically, there was anger in the Black community. And I don't listen to rap anymore, so I can't say what it's about in this day. But certainly when I started writing, it was angry poetry. I was angry at the system. I was angry at what was happening around me. So this style of poetry is also called spoken word. And I would just try to express the anger, and somehow it ended up rhyming. Somehow it ended up having a rhythm. I think I remember there was a time where I listened to Akala a lot, who also spoke of social justice issues. And I'm sure that there are some other subconscious influences regarding the poems in this collection, but maybe in a few years I'll be able to actually name them consciously.
Thank you for that question. It reminded me that actually I had written 2 poems way back, like in the 90s. And one of them was very consciously based on Shelley's Mask of Anarchy. It was called Mask of Conspiracy, and it was actually about Bosnia and the Gujarat massacre that had happened, and Palestine and a few different places I tried to kind of include in it. But if you've read the volume, you'll see I'm a free verse person. I'm not very disciplined when it comes to the sort of AABB rhyme structure, etc. So in terms of actual forms and stuff, I don't know what has influenced me. I think I'm going to go away and start thinking about it now and see who it mirrors. But definitely, like there was a poem called V by Tony Harrison, which sort of landed when I was doing my O-levels, and then it was recorded for Channel 4, and the government tried to actually ban it, or certain MPs tried to ban it from being broadcast because it was talking about social deprivation and racism and so on in this country. And at the time, I think I was a bit disappointed in it. And recently I reread it because it turns out Andy Burnham was at university with me doing the same course, and he was going on about this poem. And I was a bit like, you are not going on about it from the, I think you're just talking to an audience that's not read it. And I had to go back and reread it. And I think without realizing it, that also impacted a lot, because it's like you said, it's about the anger and kind of seeing somebody else reflect that through poetry and thinking, okay, I should do that probably. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just thinking about it now, I think there's a bit of Pushkin going on, because I used to be able to read Russian quite well, and I'm getting back into kind of trying to get that going. So I think he's in there a bit. He's a bit cheeky, and I like that. But I think, like you said, I think, it takes a long while before you realize who's there and who's not there. And I think we all take from each other. That's the thing. Sadly, I'm very disconnected from Urdu or Farsi poetry. I'm kind of hoping in my older years I'll get a bit of time to try and get the languages I need to appreciate those, inshallah. Oh, sorry, Makdijda and Goran Simic as well. Yeah.
So Arzu is mentioning second time a Bosnian poet called Makdizdar. His original name is Mehmed Alija, Mehmed Alija. His nickname is Mak, and he is the most famous Bosnian poet. Quite well translated in English. It's available. I don't know if you have a book over here. And he writes poetry about Bosnia and Bosnia, ancient, from the kingdom of Bosnia. I researched a little bit and prepared. I didn't know that Arzu will mention it, to be honest. But there is a narrated story about Bosnia that at the time of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a group of people traveled from Bosnia to Medina to meet him. But when they arrived to Medina, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam already passed away. So they were really sad and upset and all this sort of thing. It's like they stayed for a while. Somebody says 3 months, somebody said 5 months. They had to go back. It's a long journey, 6 months journey, They managed to catch some teachings from the people present over there. And if we understand, after the passing of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, things were so difficult. So you can imagine these guys coming from faraway land, not speaking language, lost, hungry, and they see big upheaval in the community. They were upset with that upheaval, so they didn't stay long. They went back to Bosnia. And the story goes, and this is very commonly believed story, and Mak actually draws a lot of his inspiration from that story. They formed something called Bosnian Church on account of what they learned in Medina, in a way that they were able to do it. So the Bosnian Church was Unitarian Church. It believed in unity of God, Jesus being a prophet of God. They did not have crosses. They lived very humbly. They picked those things up. They were persecuted both by Orthodox and by Catholics. The Crusaders were persecuting them. those of you who've been to Bosnia, Ali's been so many times by now, you can understand why we managed to survive. Those hills and mountains and everything, they were places of refuge. But the thing is that when Ottomans arrived, so many people accepted Islam. This is why we are still over there. So I'm just saying a story on account of you mentioning Mark. He drew his inspiration from this Bogomil community. The Bogomil means those who are dear to God. That's how they call themselves. We are those who are dear to God. So in other ways, it's like if you are looking for excuse, you will find excuse. If you are looking for the path, you will find the path in every way possible. So I think if there is no more questions, I wanted to ask.
Thinking about why did he see Hazrat Ali?
Look, can you imagine that? I'm trying to present it to you. It's like a group of foreigners who don't speak a language traveled for 6 months, to meet somebody they heard who came with the revelation from God. They come to Medina and they see upheaval, chaos, they don't understand what's going on. It's like, they say, oh man, it's like these guys, this is like, well, we don't try to picture that even at those times when the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive, there were munafiqeen around him. And it's like, well, it's only when the great things happen, like the shahadat of Ayatollah Khamenei, we sort of a wake up call and say, man, it's like. So if there are no questions anymore, I think, Arzu, what do you think? We finish with one poem and that's it? You okay with it? Yeah? Yeah. Bismillah. The last farewell. The withering desert lies parched and dry under the heat of the cloudless sky. Corpses lie bloodied on hostile ground. Death stalks stealthily like a hungry hound. The sand is stained with the river of red, stained dark with the blood of the dead. The breeze plays gently with the grains of sand, creating a mist across the barren land. Through this haze, one can barely see a cluster of tents in this aridity. Outside the tent, a man stands alone. Exhaustion seeps from his every bone. His tears he cautiously tries to hide, then turns slowly and walks inside. Zainab asks him with eyes full of pain, "My dear brother, does no one remain?" Merali, he slowly shakes his head. Upon Karbala's sands, they all lie dead. How I hoped that it would not come to this, that you should stand alone in this vast abyss. He looks at his sister with anguish in his eyes. Gently and softly he replies, "Mine will be but a single death, yet yours will lie at every step. My task, I know, is almost complete. So, sister, for me, do not weep. Your task, my sister, has only just begun. Today's suffering is not yet done. This day's battle not yet won. with the dungeon as your stately home. You must overturn a tyrant's throne. Deep inside men's hearts your voice must burn. The tide of thought you must turn. God's laws you must proclaim. This revolution you must inflame. Weakness and suffering you will deploy. What my sword cannot conquer, your chains will destroy. What my freedom will not vanquish, your captivity will defeat. What my warriors leave unfinished, my women must complete. His pain he tries not to show. My brave sister, now I must go. Zainab, you know what must be done. Islam's battle must be won. Across the desert, the armies wait, their leaders simmering with their hate. Their booming drums through the desert resound, inviting Hussein to stand his ground. They all demand the ultimate prize, the last and greatest sacrifice. Allah. Muhammad. Jazakallah khair. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.